Good morning. Today, as we look at 1 Samuel, we're in chapters 4 through 6. And the Ark of the Covenant comes into play here in these chapters. Chapter 4 begins with, the Ark of God, the Ark of the Covenant went to battle with the Israelites. They had gone out and battled against the Philistines, who were a mighty warrior nation, and they had lost. And so as we get to verse 5, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord came into camp, and all Israel shouted so loudly that the earth shook. And when the Philistines heard that noise, they were, what does this great shout mean? And then they understood. It says they figured that out. And in a way, I think that, when this ark came into the camp of the Israelites got this sense of false power. They got this overconfidence that happens sometimes. You think, oh, we can't lose now. Well, they did. They lost big time. A lot of men killed. And not only that, but the ark was captured by the Philistines. And two sons of Eli both lost their lives in this battle. And so verse 11, the ark of the God was captured, the sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. And then this man of Benjamin's tribe ran back to Shiloh with his clothes torn and dirt on his head. He had been in battle, and he showed the effects of that battle, dirt, and he was not clean like he had been in the morning for sure. But he came upon Eli, sitting there, it says, and he was watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. Eli was concerned that, the ark of God had been taken out there. I mean, this wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't, the ark was supposed to be in the temple. But Eli had heard the sounds of battle, and this person who came back from the battle says to Eli, I came from the battlefield and I fled today from the battle line. And Eli says, what happened? And the response, Israel has fled before the Philistines, a great slaughter among the people. Your sons are dead and the ark has been captured. I mean, you can't get much worse news than that. And it says, that Eli fell off the back of the gate and his neck was broken and he died. He says, for he was old and heavy. But, so he was 98 years old, and he had judged Israel for 40 years by this time. So he had been, a faithful ruler, but, the people of Israel weren't all really following God real well. And one of Eli's daughters-in-law was due to give birth, and she gave birth, and the son that was born was named Ichabod, and it named it that way because the glory of the Lord has departed from Israel. The Philistines took the ark of God and put it in the temple of their god, Dagon, and in the morning the statue of Dagon was tipped over. So they stood that back up again. And the next morning, it was not only tipped over, but the hands and the feet were broken off of it. And, so the ark of God had the power, God has the power to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. But, in that temple of Dagon, the power of the God of the heavens and the earth, the God that we worship, shows through in that this false god, this idol, this statue was toppled, and not only did this god get toppled over, but the people in the city, they got tumors, they got all kinds of sicknesses, and it wasn't good for the people in that city. And so they decide, these Philistines, that we got to return that ark to Israel. We're going to put it on a wagon with two cows pulling it. Nobody's going to be driving it, and we're going to put it on the road. And if it goes up the road the way it should back to the cities, then we'll know that there's a God in Israel. And that's what they did. And so the ark was returned to Israel in that manner. But there had been many of the Philistines that had died in the presence and in the vicinity of the ark. And then also, when the ark got back to the Israelites, a couple of people looked inside and they died. But this Ark of the Covenant, it's called the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of God, the Ark of the Testimony. I don't know if there's any other things that might be called, but it was the Ark was important to the people because this was where God met the people. This Ark was in the temple for that purpose. It was symbolic of the Lord's presence with the people. This Ark of the Covenant, the promise. It was, and God had given specific instructions as to how to make it with acacia wood, gold on it, to be carried on poles and all of that. And the caretakers were the Kohathite tribe of Levi. And what was in the ark, this tablets with the Ten Commandments, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, the writings of the laws of Moses, are the books of Moses they're called also. There was a jar of manna in there because God had commanded that they would gather a jar of manna and put that in the ark so that it would be a permanent reminder of God's provision for the Israelites during their wanderings in the wilderness. And the rod that Aaron had when this rod, this stick had budded overnight. And we read that story. I don't remember in which book it was, but the rod of Aaron was in there. So important items for the Israelites for their faith journey with God, and the tablets of the Ten Commandments. I mean, the first tablets that Moses had gotten, he had thrown at the feet of that golden calf, and they had broken, as well as that calf had been destroyed. But God had provided a second set, and so this Ark of the Covenant was the place of keeping of important artifacts, important things from God. And the Ten Commandments, the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, those 5 books, the Pentateuch, the books of Moses, books of the law, whatever you want to call them, and the jar of manna and Aaron's rod, things that the Israelites knew what these represented. They knew that they represented the power of God, the favor of God, and that God had chosen his people Israel, to be his people that way anyway. So in chapter 6, again, I mentioned that the ark is returned to Israel in that kind of a strange manner. They just set it on this cart and hook up two cows to it that had never been bridled before, and they go where they're supposed to go. And then the Philistines had included a trespass offering along with it. 5 golden tumors and 5 golden rats. And I'm thinking, what's a golden rat? I mean, hopefully your Bibles maybe have a different word for that. I don't know what a golden rat really is that way. And I didn't see anything in. The tumors and the rats were the reminders of plagues that had been against the Philistines. And that was, the Ark of the Covenant too. I think, it really stood out as a remembrance for the people of Israel that God had led them out of captivity in Egypt, and the leadership and the favor of God. And so for them to get the Ark of the Covenant back was a tremendous fortunate thing to happen to them. And I mentioned that there were some that had looked in the ark. It wasn't just a couple. In verse 19 of chapter 6, then God, struck the men of Beth Shemesh because they had looked into the ark of the Lord. 50,070 men of the people, had been struck. And that's, it's just, they were not supposed to do that. They knew what was in there. And maybe they looked to see that, make sure that the Philistines hadn't taken anything. I don't know. But God is very specific in some of the things that he tells the Israelites. And he is, he means the laws, and most of all, he means his love and his grace and his leadership for each and every one. And this is one of the things that I think we just continue to learn about as we continue to read the Old Testament as well as the New Testament, that God's leadership and God's grace is there for all.